And welcome everybody to this special live stream with none other than Steve Anderson. I'm so happy, Steve. And yes, I know it wasn't the live kickoff. I tried to make a new slide for this. It was just a crazy day. So please excuse it. It's not the live kickoff. It is the live Q&A with Steve Anderson. And as you can see on the screen, Steve is there with his Targets USA hat. Steve, how are you?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great tonight, and it's fun to do this. This is something I thought about for a while. I wanted to bring extra value to the people who took the time to purchase the All Access Pass, not just from 2018, but from 2017, 2016. So hopefully, some of these other guys will come here tonight and ask questions, because that's what this is for. This is for them who have questions to ask you, because we've already had, in the live kickoff, we had you. Did you say something? Oh, okay. I thought you were about to say something.
I'm just being polite to the host. I know how this works. Number one, make the host look good, which we've already done. Plug the host products, which we've also done, and then be polite and patient. That's just what I'm here to do. Help you out in any way I can. I'm very pleased to be here yet again.
I'm just listening to the audio. Yeah, the audio sounds good. That way I don't have to bother people asking about the audio. So this is for you guys who are here to ask Steve questions. Some of you might be fans of That Shooting Show. That is a fantastic podcast. I talked about it ad nauseum on the last time Steve was here. It was like a week ago. And that was one of the things that got me into shooting. So, hopefully more people are coming in. I see, we're getting a lot more people watching. And so while we're waiting for people to land here, I see that Long Duck Dong, welcome, my friend, and Zachary are here. Where are you guys from? So Steve can know. So I know we're not listening for them, but hopefully they'll type it. And thank you, the Dong, for that compliment. I appreciate it. Dong said thank you for the summit. He said great job.
I can't believe you're actually having a conversation with a guy named Long Duck Dong. I mean, that's
great
your
movie.
Level of professionalism. It's really impressive.
Great movie. One of my favorite movies. What was that? That was 16 Candles. That, by the way, filmed where I grew up. All the John Hughes films were filmed where I grew up, which is pretty fantastic. That and Risky Business, which wasn't a John Hughes film.
Is that Florida or California?
No, that was in Chicago.
Oh, see? Big movie buff over here. Big movie buff.
Got to get you. So Zach is from Southwest Ohio. And the Dong, I can't remember exactly where you're from. I know that you'd won something last time, and I just can't remember what your address was. Oh, no, you won a pass. That's what you did. Steve Dobbs is from Canada. And any of these people are familiar from you. Bill, hey, Bill, guess what? I got the shirt. Thank you so much. It is awesome. That was so cool. Thank you. So Bill's from New York. And
that's got to be Bill Dolan.
Yes, Bill Dolan, the man.
Bill Dolan's editing the 4th book.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Well, keep at it, Bill. I know what it's like to work for this man. And the Dong is from Kelowna, British Columbia. Wow. That is a long way. Jane, welcome. Mark from Australia. My God, Mark, you gotta tell me, what time is it in Australia? I mean, I could look it up on the iPhone. I can ask Siri, but just what time is it in Australia? It's gotta be like bright early in the morning. That's what I'm guessing. Well, while we're waiting. So guys, this is for you. This is your time. This is your hour with Steve Anderson, Bill Jackson from Biloxi, and he's going to see you Thursday, Steve.
Yeah, we're getting up bright early to go to the airport tomorrow morning.
Okay,
we're ready
Steve,
to go.
Just do me a favor real quick. Just tell everybody. And Mark says it's 11:07 a.m. Wow. Thanks for waking up for this. Tell you got a crazy travel schedule coming up. What are your classes coming up?
Well, I'm going to Mississippi tomorrow. And then there's a whole lot of things in the works right now. There's a lot of moving pieces. We're looking forward to going to South Africa in March. Looks like going to be in South Africa for a couple of weeks there. And then there's 5 or 6 little classes popping up. Ontario, New York in June and July. We got 2 classes there already. And people always want to know, hey, what's the class schedule? By the time I can announce it, it's usually full. So anybody who wants to do a class, the best thing to do is just email me and say, hey, I live in Poughkeepsie. I want to do a class. And I'll email you back and say, can you get 7 people in a class? And they'll say, I'll let you know when I can. And that's how it works. You organized a class once.
Twice.
Twice, yeah.
Twice. Once out in the middle of nowhere, and then once up at that range.
Yep, I remember.
We got a couple more people coming in. We got Sherman from Argentina. Holy cow. That is incredible. That's got to be one of the farthest places. I mean, Australia is actually pretty, I think, farther. But still, Argentina, that's amazing. And we've got Buzzford from West Virginia. He's been looking forward to this. Good. Well, Steve's got a super busy class schedule coming up, which I can't wait to hear his stories. You should probably podcast from South Africa. That would be pretty cool. Talk to some of the people there.
Yeah, I'm working on my accent. Between Australia and South Africa, there's a lot of different accent studies going on. You got to be careful with accents. You don't want to offend anybody when you get into their accent.
No.
Have to work on that.
Yeah, just don't say qualifier again. That was too funny.
Which one, the South African qualifier or the Australian qualifier?
Well, when you were talking about the Ohio qualifier.
Oh, the Ohio qualifiers have ostriches. I shot the qualifier and I hit the ostrich. I did not see an ostrich on the classifier. No, the ostrich. Right, the ostrich.
All right, guys. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let's get into some questions. So just ask a question, and I know there's some questions in the Facebook group, which I'll pull up and ask as well. But ask a question, and I will drag it if I can, so Steve can see it. But somebody asked, is it socially acceptable to make kids go to bed early to hear it? I think
absolutely.
Yes. That was an easy question.
As a 5-year veteran of step parenting, they can go to bed at any time for any reason. They're lucky they're not already in bed. That's how I look at that.
Someone asked a question about musicians. Why so many musicians get into competitive shooting?
That guy's a drummer, so he's not really a musician. I actually saw that question already. A drummer's a guy that hangs out with musicians. You meet a bunch. One thing that I think always fascinates me is when you find somebody who's good at shooting, you usually find out it's not the first thing they've been good at. And so I think a lot of the same personalities are drawn to it. One neat thing about shooting versus being a musician is nobody has to like your shooting for you to beat them. They can have all kind of criticism of how you do things and how you look and your haircut and all the rest of it, but your score is your score. And music is so subjective, it can be very frustrating to devote your entire life essentially to something that somebody else comes along and says, this is no good. This is last month's news, so forget about it.
Do you think, though, there's something about the element of practice with musicians that make them excel better than, I think musicians and previous athletes do really well when they get into competitive shooting.
Well, musicians aren't going to kid themselves about the practice that's required. Any serious musician knows that to be any good, you got to work your butt off. And I think there are some people who get into shooting with the typical male ego. Usually they think they can buy a really nice gun and get to a certain spot pretty quick. And it's just not like that. It takes a lot of work. And people have accused me of having natural talent with a handgun. I can assure you that is not the case. I was terrible when I started. Absolutely horrible. So if there is aptitude for shooting a firearm biologically or genetically, I'm not sure what it would be.
All right. So let me see if I can put this down here. Zachary Wright. So Steve, I am a junior shooter, and I've gotten really fast, really quickly in my movements, but I lose a lot of time waiting for the gun to come back into my index to have an acceptable sight pick. Any suggestions?
What division is he shooting? Production? Is he shooting open?
Zach,
And
if
what's
you
a
could
long time?
answer those questions for us, Zach. What's a long time and what division are you shooting? And while we're waiting for Zach's response, because he's typing,
It's very rare that people are losing stages or matches due to split times. Now, if he's having to wait for that gun to settle, we're going to figure out why that is very quickly. But I want to know: are we talking 2500s? Are we talking 2/10? You know, what is the amount of time that's not acceptable?
all right, so he shoots production.
Okay.
And how much time is that what you're asking for? How much time do you think he's losing?
Well, I just want to know how long he thinks he's waiting for it. You know, or are we talking about 20 splits at 7 yards, or what are we talking about?
He shoots a CZ SPO1.
Of course, they
Of
all
course,
do.
that makes you want to go fast. It does.
Then he's shooting 147 grain bullet like they all are.
So maybe switch to a lighter grain if he's
What
worried
I'm
about.
if he's waiting on the gun, then a 124, 125 grain load will return quicker. It was funny when I was talking to Bob Vogel last week. He said, "Yeah, it returns slower, but you can't shoot it that fast anyway."
Right, I heard him say that.
I have shot a lot of these metal guns. I even shot one of the Tanfos. A guy had found a 160 grain bullet, and that muzzle is still in the air waiting to come down, and that was 2 years ago. You know, to me, in my perception, they get sluggish. You know, you get those heavy guns shooting those heavy bullets, and they just get a little sluggish. It's not going to hurt you to try a 124, take it out and put the timer on it and see. But I would applaud him for realizing that he is waiting on the gun. A lot of folks go their whole careers and don't ever see that. You know, they see something when the gun fires, then they don't see much else. But if he's actually seeing it lift and having to wait 2 or 3 hundredths for it to return, then he's way ahead of a lot of people, because a lot of folks never see that.
I'm curious, Zach. What did he say? No, he just said he was a junior shooter. What classification are you right now? If you can answer that. And while we're waiting, we have nearly normal who says that he's going to be seeing you in Biloxi on Friday.
Perfect. Yeah, we're going to be there. We have a smaller class Thursday, Friday, then we have a regular group class Saturday, Sunday.
While I'm going back here, so yeah, Zachary, if you can answer that question while we're waiting, and guys, right? Don't be shy. Again, ask as many questions as you possibly can. This is this is for you.
Well, let's go back and talk to Mr. Slow Eyes over there while we're waiting on the other folks. So if you're 7 yards and under, you should be able to do 15, 16, 17 splits pretty much all day long. As it gets reduced, those are going to go up a little bit. But so, you know, by the time you get back to 15 yards, you're going to be at 2/10, 2500ths. You know, maybe even longer than that. I'm just so curious to know what he thinks is an unacceptable amount of time.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, though, I mean, how much does it really matter?
Well, that's the smallest number. So whenever people look at trying to get faster, I tell them to look at the big numbers first. And the splits are always the smallest number. You know, you've got time between positions is going to be the biggest number. After that, you get into transitions pretty quickly. Once you conquer that, you get down to time to first shot before too long. And then splits is you know, the very last smallest number that typically, you know, can be worked on, unless it's something ridiculous like 30 splits at 3 yards. But I don't think that's his problem.
There was a podcast with JJ that came out not too long ago, and he was talking about that. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
He was talking about how he was worried about the splits, but then he eventually got rid of that worry. And it was more about shooting, knowing he can shoot at whatever distance that he was at, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure. Well, that's a very extrapolated version of he decided he'd rather hit the target than pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. And so many people would rather pull the trigger than they would hit the target. And when you say it out loud, it sounds absurd, but it really is true. We've all known shooters like that who'd rather pull the trigger than hit the target. He came to the conclusion that hitting the target was more important than pulling the trigger. What I thought was fascinating about that particular interview was the 15 minutes he spent talking about refining his trigger pull.
Yes.
That was a bit of a surprise.
Well, I mean, again, that's going to amount for the majority of your missed shots is slapping that trigger and
It's
jerking
going to
it.
be all your missed shots.
And,
Absolutely.
yeah. So it made me think about what I'm doing. If he's willing to put that kind of time in. And remember, guys, JJ just came off winning, 2 national championships in a row, which is and almost 3. I mean, when he came in second, I believe.
Second in production, yeah.
I mean, that's.
And again, my favorite part of that was how he arrived at what I call match mode, which is where you go to the match and you're just so sure of what you can do that not only are you calmed down, but you're free of having to rush and try and hurry.
All right, so we got some feedback here from Zachary. I guess he was writing a novel because YouTube just crashed. All right, so Zachary is saying he's using a 125 grain bullet. I don't think I'm waiting on the gun, but rather it's settling back into an acceptable sight picture. I am unfortunately D-class. You don't have to be unfortunately D-class, but it's been 4 or 5 months since I've shot a classifier.
How old is he?
He's a junior shooter. And I'm going to be honest. That's him going to be honest. I'm never honest. I don't know how long it takes for it to settle. It just feels way too long compared to some of the other shooters I'm shooting with. He's comparing to other shooters who are at the max B and A class usually.
Well, so
a couple things going on there.
I got it all figured out. So we have a grip issue for sure. So whenever you fire a handgun, it goes up, down, shimmy, settle. And because he's a junior, he's probably not very old. I would guess preteen based on what we're hearing from him, maybe early teens. So he probably doesn't have a great grip, which is going to contribute to that quite a bit. And not to be critical of our young junior shooter with a lousy grip, spoken with love, I assure you, we don't have any real data either. And we know, and he will learn as he gets older, that the male mind is not capable of measuring time when it's engrossed in an event. So his perception of his splits is not really meaningful for this conversation. We need some actual data.
Oops. There we go. And I just throw in my 2 cents on that. It was the legendary Bruce Gray who basically just said what you said right there, is that the emotional, you got to get rid of that emotional connection to the passing of time because we cannot judge it. It's impossible for us. Everyone's perception is going to be different. And likewise, you're comparing yourself. When you say something like, unfortunately, I'm a D-class shooter, you're imposing like judgment on yourself at that point. I would get rid of that. I would just, listen, you keep at it. You're going to be a grandmaster eventually, especially if you're a young shooter like that. I mean, I wish I got into this.
Oh, could you imagine?
Age. Oh my God.
Could you imagine being like 12 years old and having good parents who would take you and load you and buy you guns and all the rest of it with all the information we have available today? Good Lord, it'd be unbelievable. It's just like playing guitar. Playing guitar is so much easier now than it used to be. You got the YouTube there to show you. You got countless magazines and books. It wasn't like that when I was coming up. We had to carry our guitar to school uphill in the snow.
Both ways. All right, so Zach, I would suggest also start listening, if you haven't already, to That Shooting Show, because the content has just been phenomenal now that he can focus more on it. Not that it wasn't phenomenal before. And also pick up Steve's books for sure.
Well, and Zach, you can certainly send me an email, steve@andersonshooting.com. Go out and do a bill drill and tell me what those times are. My guess is, do we know how old he is yet?
He didn't say. He'll eventually say. When you get a chance, Zach, just type it in the chat. But I'm going to move on, so we're not here all night. Oh, he's 14, by the way.
Yeah, so he doesn't have a great grip.
Start doing all sorts of pull-ups and push-ups.
Yeah, you need to get stronger. Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's see. Let's get Buzzford. Buzzford says, do you have a drill to work on trigger control at speed, at least the speed of a match mode?
I think that's really a shot calling thing. Um, Provided we have an acceptable grip for the conditions, right? We know the faster we want to shoot, the more grip we need. I've always thought that dry fire itself is a pretty good drill for trigger control at speed, because if I can, let me show you. Empty gun. Okay. If I can pull the trigger that fast in dry fire without moving it, that's a pretty good drill for trigger control at speed. Okay. So not specifically, but I've always thought that shot calling drills will reveal if there's a problem there, because that's why we're calling our shots anyway, is to monitor for any marksmanship errors that we commit as we try to go faster or as we shoot the visual conditions that we're seeing. So to answer his question, dry firing at that maximum speed, you're going to know if you're moving the gun. It's going to be obvious to you. And that's one of the misconceptions people have about dry fire, by the way, is so many people will say to me, I don't want to pull the trigger too fast because it's unrealistic. And my response to that is, it's okay to be unrealistic. You're seeing what you need to see, so let's pull that trigger. If you're doing 6 reload 6 and it sounds like this, that's a problem. It needs to sound like this. Right? Or maybe even faster than that. So I think that's probably the best drill for trigger control at speed. Sorry, the word trigger makes me stutter. It's one of those weird things. Like digital, I can't say digital very well. Trigger's one of those words.
Okay. I won't hold it against you. All right. Steve Mills says, is it worth to shoot close Cs on close targets if you're going for speed shooting minor?
Is it Steve Mills or Steve Miles?
I'm sorry, Steve Miles.
Yeah,
the screen is far away from me, so I can't.
I figured it'd be my brother from another Steve. That question is answered by your hit factor. I would never advocate that you shoot a Charlie on purpose,
especially not in minor.
Right, but
on a close target, what I wouldn't even. You shouldn't be disrespecting that target.
Well, it looks like Ark shut that one all buttoned down, Steve.
The only reason I say that is because I've been there. Because I've been there.
Well, and you could make a pretty good case for the alphas on close targets are worth more because you can get them quicker.
Right.
I would tell Steve, shoot in minor, shooting a non-alpha intentionally is never a good idea, but you got to make sure that you're not slowing down so much that you're shooting perfect alphas. That's when people want to slow down and get their hits, and then they wind up having this other problem. They wind up being in bullseye mode.
Well, you know what happens, Steve? If you leave that on the table, your opponent's going to take it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're not going to make Charlies. They're going to have 2 alphas at the same speed.
Right. And, everybody that says that USPSA is not an accuracy game, well, if both guys shoot a 19-second run, guess who's going to win? The guy that has more alphas. It's just as simple as that.
Wait, I just saw a follow-up from Steve Miles. Let me see if I can get that. This thing goes pretty fast. It says, seems like I'm getting beat by shooters or spiriting bullets, or maybe spitting bullets for a fast stage time, gain a bunch of A's and C's instead of trying to put shots in the A zone. That's what it seems like to him. He's getting beat by shooters who are.
Is he talking PCC or carry optics?
Steve, is it PCC or carry? I know he could have heard you, but I'm repeating it, so maybe he'll answer that.
If it's PCC, then maybe the hit factor gets so high that that's possible. Steve knows I'm not a mathematician, and he actually sent me a question just a few days ago wanting more math on the show so we can figure it out. But you can make a spreadsheet real easy where you can put a hit factor in and find out what all those different times are costing you. I just know that as soon as you find somebody who's as fast as you, those points are going to get real important. Now, when you're dramatically faster than everybody else, like when you're A-class open shooting against C-class open, you can fire a lot of Charlies and Deltas. But as soon as you go find somebody who's as fast as you or close to as fast as you, it starts to matter a bunch.
All right, got some clarification. He's talking PCC.
Yeah, PCC is new math, brother. Those hit factors are getting so high that it's changing a little bit.
Yep, I agree with that. All right, let's go back in the comments here. And who did we miss? Okay, I like this one. Kiwi Gun Gamer. I can't just get enough of your advice, Steve. Oh, it's not a question, it's just a comment. It's spot on, to the point, and it works. Well, thank you for that, Kiwi Gun Gamer.
I think you mean thank me for that, don't you, Arik?
Yes, thank you. No, thank him for that comment.
Well, and I would encourage people to email me questions. Honestly, I feel like I've been doing the same podcast every day for 2 years now. And if people have questions or they need clarification on the 3 modes of practice or on match mode or any of the rest of it, send me those questions. I'll be more than happy to go over them again, because the last thing I want to do is do another podcast on match mode, fearing that you guys are just going to roll your eyes and wait for the fart gun to come on, you know. By the way, Arik hates the fart gun. I've got it right here. He's so afraid I'm going to use it. Got the 2 greatest guns ever invented.
I do have a mute button for you, Steve. All right, let's get back to the questions here. This one is from Ethan Wilding. Steve, help with shot calling 8 to 12 yards. Closer, not an issue. Farther out.
Yeah, Ethan, actually, we did a phone consult for him, and I think we shaved 2 seconds off his 6 reload 6. He sent me a couple of videos. So he's probably not calling his shots. He's probably just not making any mistakes. And on shot calling is not necessary until you make a mistake. And that's why I tell people that the more accurate a shooter is, you take somebody who's like super, super, super accurate, it can be very hard for them to learn shot calling because the bullets go where the gun's pointed when they pull the trigger. They're not making any errors. But these shooters are usually held back by speed. They're very, very accurate, but they've come up against a time problem. They're revealed to be slow in whatever their matches are. You know, like I had a client who could shoot. He shot GSSF, and he could shoot that little 380, the little 42, at 25 yards at the pizza pan every time. That is not easy to do with that little gun. Now he's got a lot of time on it. The guy owns 67 Glocks. You know, yeah. In fact, I just got a letter from him. I was going to post a picture of this. P.S. I won 2 more Glocks, and I'm up to 67 Glocks.
Wow.
But he's one of only 2 guys that have not had a shot calling epiphany. The guy's so accurate, he doesn't make mistakes. And until you push the speed enough to make a mistake in practice, you're not going to see an error because you didn't make an error. You know, what I would say on mid-range targets is let's go out and practice and let's push the speed up a little bit until we make an error, until we're on that trigger too soon or the gun gets a little sloppy when it comes down, and then let's observe that error. And a lot of guys don't understand that a called delta is a huge victory when you're learning to call your shots, right? So perfect alphas that we know everything about is not necessarily a victory when you're trying to learn shot calling. What really helps is when you have that one shot that I think something went left. And then you go down there and sure enough, there it is, it went left. And that's one of my favorite moments on the range, because guys will start out almost like trying to guess it. You know, they'll say, 2 alpha. And I'll go back behind the target and say, are you sure?
Alpha, I remember that.
Alpha Charlie? You know, they do the little girl thing at the end where the voice goes up. And then about an hour later, something really cool happens. They get a lot more confident in what they're telling me. I'll go down there and stand by that middle target, and he'll say 2 alpha. And I'll say, are you sure? He'll say, absolutely. And there'll be 2 alpha right there because he saw it. And you have to get really interested in seeing it. And Mr. Wilding, I believe, doesn't have access to a lot of live fire, and that is one thing that has to be done with a lot of live fire. You can for sure call your shots in dry fire, and you have to make dry fire effective, but you're not going to learn live fire shot calling without doing live fire shot calling.
All right. Quick question for you from Kiwi Gun Gamer. He wanted to know if there's any chance of you from making a trip. I can't do it. New Zealand. I'm sorry. Any chance of you to make a trip to New Zealand for a working holiday?
Is he a leprechaun, Arik? Is that what you're trying to insinuate, that people from New Zealand are leprechauns?
I was thinking of the best Hobbit thing, Lord of the Rings.
He's like our mate from Australia who's into his 3rd beer at 11 a.m. That's Hey, Hey guys, I will go anywhere. I'm doing this full time right now for as long as we can. I will literally go anywhere. I had one of my Denmarkian friends emailed me from Denmark today, and want me to come to Denmark. So I had to look up a flight to Denmark. I'll go wherever, guys. It doesn't
Well, you're
matter to
going to
me.
be out in Australia. I mean, you could just hop over to go to New Zealand.
I don't know where these places are.
Okay, so New Zealand and they're like right next to each other.
Okay.
So maybe when are you going to Australia?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you had planned that.
Well, no, we're for sure going to South Africa. They want me to go to Denmark. But just to answer that question, I will go anywhere you can put a class together. Obviously, the expenses of the trip figure into the cost of the class. But I'm willing to go anywhere.
Awesome.
I have full permission from the wife to travel as needed.
And then he's going to build up his Instagram, guys, because his Instagram right now is really weak sauce. So by him traveling, he's going to learn how to take pictures and post it, and it's going to like blossom.
I don't fully understand the Instagram thing. I'm not real sure why.
We'll talk
why
about that
we're doing
offline.
this.
As your tech manager, we'll talk about that offline. All right, back to the questions. This is from Chris Klotzko. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Go ahead, Pacoima. All right. Most of the people don't even know what that is.
Wow. Is that Yiddish for leprechaun?
That was my best Larry King. All right. How do you draw the line between concentrating on the process rather than the results and going to the match with confidence, per Lenny Basham? I'm going to... What? Piece of cake? I'm not even going to finish that. Okay.
There is no outcome. There is only process. And that's what gets guys... That's what gets them stuck halfway. Is they go to the match with the right process-based thinking, then they have 2 good stages, they think they don't need it anymore. Or they have 3 good stages, they start thinking it's in the bag. Ooh, now it's in the bag. I'm going to win my first match ever. And they start doing things differently. Doing things differently is what causes inconsistency. It's the English language, for crying out loud. You know, consistency equals the same thing over and over and over again. Well, shooters don't like to do that. They like things to be fun, different, and exciting. Well, good shooting is going to be very boring. It's not going to be exciting. But it is what you must do if you desire consistency, and that is approach every stage, every way, every single time. So there is no thought of outcome. 99% of you listening to this are not ready to think about the outcome. That was one of the neat things I was interested to talk to Bob Vogel about, because he has been a world champion and has had to deal with that, knowing where he was and what the placement was. And I thought his answer was great. When you've been there before, you feel like you're supposed to be there before. Phenomenal answer. You know, maybe it's hard the first time, and I certainly get that. But once you've been at that level a couple of times, it is where you are supposed to be. So there's no anxiety about it. But going back to his question, as soon as you start thinking about outcome, it's done. It's over, because your mind's off the process. And shooters are notorious for using a process to solve a problem and then disregarding the process that solved the problem the next time they go to solve the problem. It'd be like an architect trying to build a house without a diagram. Asinine.
You also have a request to go to Buenos Aires from Sherman.
Sure.
Guys, send at the end of this, we'll go over his email and all his point of contacts and send him emails. He will gladly. He's got nothing else to do. He will gladly.
I literally have in my office, I have Front Sight magazine and a SIG 320X5. I have nothing else going on except the fart gun. I'm not allowed to use the fart gun. So.
Oh boy. All right. Let's go. Nick has a question for you. I think I can take a crack at this one, but he wants to know the first 12 drills for 20 to 30 minutes sessions per day, or 6 in the morning and the other 6 in the afternoon, which is better? And you just answered that in one of your podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Arik. You take a stab at this one.
Two times a day is better.
Yes, and I would do all 12 twice a day.
Yeah, why not? Because you can set that egg timer for like 3 minutes per each drill.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody who thinks they don't have time should subtract every minute that they spend staring at this ridiculous time waster that we all waste time on. There's your dry fire time, is all the time you spend with the little blue screen, waiting to see what Angus Hobdell had for lunch on the Facebook. Okay, put the damn thing. And I'm not suggesting I'm not guilty of it. I waste as much time as anybody. But if you're looking to free up time, getting off that stupid smartphone is the easiest time you can free up.
I agree. This is from the Dong. Steve, what is the trick to a super? I want to know why I picked that name. What is the trick to a super fast draw to a sight picture? Practice. That's what I'm thinking.
There's about 3 of them. Let's see. Number 1, you want to make sure that your shoulder is not down and lazy. You want to make sure that your shoulder is up and ready to work, not hunched up here. But the best way to set your shoulder is just put your hand on your gun, leave your shoulder where it's at, and then put your forearm on the magwell of your gun. Okay? So you're going to wind up. I can't stand up or I'll knock my microphone over.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, I know. So you have your forearm on the magwell of your gun, which gets your hand as close to your gun as you can get. And then from there, it's really just reaction time to the timer. What a lot of people will do is they will slow down the entire draw so that they can aim the very end of it. They'll do like they'll actually start aiming with the gun still in the holster, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as it gets up, they want to start aiming it. I'm telling you, man, 2 days of speed mode dry fire on a close target is going to solve that for you forever. We get everybody in our classes, we get everybody under a second in 10 minutes. Even the 72-year-old lady named Bonnie was under a second. She was in Wichita Falls, by the way, Double Tap Ranch. Super nice lady.
Let me ask your opinion on this. I've seen it 2 ways. One where you're just explosively getting that gun out there, then breaking the shot once it's out there. Versus some people, they bring it up, and then as they're presenting it right here, they're getting their sights, and they can break it supposedly quicker because they've already lined up their sights. Sorry
depends
about
on
that.
The target.
Sorry?
It just depends on the target.
Depends on the target.
On something like on the classifier, like Can You Count? I think the last time I shot a 63 in an open. I wasn't in an intimate relationship with that dot when that shot broke. I knew it was on the target and I could see it on the target, but people, it's so funny. People aim when they don't need to, and then when they need to, they don't. So we have a question about how can I get faster on close targets? Well, the answer is you're probably practicing aiming and not practicing a fast draw. Meaning he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know why he's doing it. Let's get the fast draw first. And I'm telling you, after an hour of that, you're not going to need to aim the gun anymore because it's going to be pointed at whatever you're looking at. So, sometimes I forget that people haven't done this for 2 hours a day for 10 years. So many of these problems will solve themselves if they'll just get into routine and stick to it. I can't tell you how many letters I've gotten from people that say, hey, I'm having a problem with this and that. I don't dry fire very much. And it's all I can do not to just capitalize that and send it back to them and send them a bill. What a great business model.
Here's a total newbie question. He is Scott Eslick. Total newbie here. I'm a Glock shooter. How do you get multiple shots while dry practicing? Steve actually taught me a really cool technique.
Yeah, so all you got to do, take your Glockenspiegel and then take a paster or a rubber band or a piece of cardboard and put it right there so that your slide is held just slightly out of battery, and then make sure that whatever you stick in there doesn't interfere with your sight picture, and then that will lock the slide of your Glock back so that your trigger, instead of being a dead Glock trigger like normally would be, will more resemble the far superior SIG 320 model and actually function. Then you can do your multiple shot drills that way. It also has the nice benefit of being an extra safety step to make sure your gun's not loaded. It'd be very hard for that gun to be loaded in that environment. So just take a little paste or a piece of cardboard and put it. Ark, what is this thing called? Is that the hood or the breech face or what?
That's the breech. I would say that would be the breech face or the ejection port, maybe.
Yeah. So, and just stick it right in there, and
that's free, guys. That's totally free. There's a $99 version that you could also get, which is the dry fire mag, And that's a mag that goes in there, and it gives you a trigger that you can adjust heavy to light. But again, it's $99. This is free, what he's saying.
Yeah, and I actually tried the client of mine that has 67 Glocks. He had one of those things at one of our sessions, and I thought, and I don't know how much he adjusted it, if any. He just wanted me to see it because people are always showing me dry fire gadgets. Hey, the dry fire gadget, check out this dry fire gadget. And he also had that Mantis rail mounted trigger judge thing, which I thought was actually pretty neat. That you can spend a lot of time doing that. But that particular kit that he had made his trigger heavier than normal. He was already using a stock Glock trigger because of GSSF rules.
Yes.
And it actually made his trigger heavier, which I didn't care for. That particular setup I didn't like very much.
Yeah, I did a review of it. I liked it, but you're right. It was kind of, you have a little Allen key that you got to go back and forth to adjust the trigger weight, and I never really got anything that was matching what my Glock was. So, let's see. Besford, thank you. He likes what we're doing here, and he likes our podcast. Arik is less formal mode, works really well with Steve. Oh, thank you. I've known Steve for a long time. Let's see.
I think you were my second big class I ever did.
Really?
Yeah, one of the like very early large classes. The first big one I did was in Virginia. I think there were 14 or 15 guys. That's where I met Kevin McPhee and yelled at him for smoking his cigar the whole time. And he's like, I paid to be here. I'll smoke my cigar if I want to. Because he wouldn't put the damn thing down, I've learned to leave him alone with his cigars.
Yes, and actually Nick is talking about the Gurkha interview I did. And yes, I smoked a Gurkha the other day. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? I don't know if, let's see, Sherman has something here. This is Sherman from Buenos Aires. Ammo price is an issue here. So is it enough to dry fire practice and going to local matches to improve shot calling and recoil management, or do you necessarily need to reproduce your dry fire drills in live fire?
Man, that all depends on how strong your match mode is. And we're going to assume he's talking about a iron-sighted gun. There are levels of vision that are only revealed when you're launching bullets down the range.
Right.
And yes, you can go very far, and you can have a good local career, but at a certain point, you're going to have to put some rounds down range so you can really learn how to call those shots and you can learn to shoot quicker. But inside of a certain level of participation, I think you could have a great time dry firing, but you're going to need a really strong match mode because the problem with limited live fire is it's not normal for the gun to go off. It's normal for the gun to be in your hand. It's normal for you to handle it and move it around and do things with it. All that's perfectly normal. But the gun firing is not normal. And there's always going to be this acclimation period when you go out. It's sort of like if you shoot a 22 for an hour, then you go back to your 9mm, you're like, whoa, that's really crazy.
Yep.
And that 9 doesn't kick at all, but you've been shooting that 22 for an hour. And that 9 feels like a massive gun now. It's the same problem when we don't live fire enough. The body gets accustomed to no recoil. It takes a little while for it to recover. I don't think it hurts you near as much in open for numerous reasons. I think in open, as I've said numerous times, I think in open you can get away with a little less live fire and a little more dry fire because you don't have that constant vision focus problem. He can absolutely do it. He's just going to it's going to be a limiting factor at some point.
Yeah, I would say instead of going to one of those matches, split up that ammo for some live fire sessions. It'll probably be better for you.
And you have to be smart about your live fire. A lot of people view live fire practice the same way that they evaluate classes. They look at the round count and go, ooh, 1,200 rounds in a day, that must be a great class. Well, that might not be a great class, shooting 1,200 rounds may not teach you anything. Mm-hmm. I've always been so insistent on my time and my ammunition yielding results because I never have time to waste and never have ammo to waste.
We got a request here. I don't quite know what it is. Glenn wants you to sing the Steve Was Right song. And a bunch of people second that idea.
It's very simple. Somebody will argue with me. or they'll be skeptical about something, and then they'll finally do what I tell them to do, and I'll go up to the target, look at the timer, and I'll go, Steve was right. Steve was right. Steve was right. That's right. Steve was right. I'm pretty sure I told you to go a little faster, and I'm pretty sure that I was right. But don't. Steve was right. So that's how that goes.
Wow.
And you could do that. You could take that as far as you want to go. Now, here's a question for Steve Miles, if he's still listening: is what famous comedian did a song just like that one that song was stolen from? Steve was right. Somebody will know where that little tune comes from. A very, very famous comedian.
Rick James. No.
No. Steve Miles is the right age to actually know where I stole that song from, but that's the Steve was right song. I also have a great job for your last day.
Oh, I know who.
Go ahead.
Eddie Murphy.
Nope.
No.
Here's another great song for your last day at work, right? Not my problem. It's not my. And you can imagine what the pause is for. It's not my effing problem.
Richard Pryor?
Somebody else got to solve them.
Richard Pryor?
Not my effing. No, it's not Richard Pryor.
Steve Martin.
No.
Damn. I'm guessing just different. Oh, Bill Cosby. That's right.
Bill Cosby.
Dad is great. Gives us the chocolate
Give us
cake.
the chocolate cake.
Sends
There's
us to
eggs
jail.
in the chocolate cake. Yeah, the Steve was right song is stolen from the Dad is Great song.
Yeah. Okay. I knew it was a comedian from our time.
Was it Steve Miles that got it right?
No, it was serious Bill Dolan.
Oh, well, Bill Dolan. He's not only is he a comedic genius, but he's a trivia mastermind.
Steve Mills did say Bill Cosby and Red Fox. So
no, maybe Red Fox. I don't go back far enough into Red Fox. I'm way too white for Red Fox.
Yeah, Red Fox is serious.
That's getting down in there.
But Sherman from Buenos Aires, he is very excited by your comments and your singing abilities. All right, let's get back to some questions before we totally go off the rails here. Steve Dobbs. There's a lot of Steves here tonight. Must be a Steve thing.
It's a Steve fest.
It's a Steve fest. You can't have too much Steve. Any drills to work on not? I like how that question's phrased. Any drills to work on not slapping the trigger? LOL.
Slapping the trigger is highly desirable.
That's what JJ said. He wanted what Bill, not Bill Cosby. What? Sorry, I can't think of his name now. Rob Latham said is it looks like you slapped the trigger, but the gun's not moving. So you can slap it all you want as long as the gun doesn't move.
Right.
You can move it as long as you want.
Ernest Langdon yelled at me about this issue one time. Had a class in Virginia.
You went to a class with him?
He was in my class.
He went to your class.
Yeah. Oh, it don't sound so surprised. It could happen.
Oh my God. Talk about pressure.
Yeah, it's like giving Eddie Van Halen a freaking guitar lesson, right?
Right.
And so every word I said, I'm like, ooh, I hope Ernie doesn't shake his head. I'm getting ready to make my patent speech about this or that, and I'm going to look over Ernie making the who farted face, and I'm going to lose control of the class.
He's a serious guy too.
He's actually he was so gracious, and from the moment he got to class, and we were going to get along because we both showed up in flip flops and had to put our Solomons on right there at the table. So it was like these two. So at any rate, so Ernie was instrumental in the Smith & Wesson MMPs. He was either working with Smith at the time or was involved in that project. And he was talking about that a little bit. And I said, yeah, but the reset's mushy. And I could tell it was a hot button issue for him because he said, do you shoot off the reset? And I said, no. He goes, then what are you complaining about it for? And that's just another way to look at, it may be desirable at some point when you're shooting groups to shoot like this and then oh, yeah, and let it just far enough, wait for the reset, and then shoot again. But we don't shoot like that. So we have to learn to shoot quicker without disturbing the gun. And, Robbie was the first guy that said, yeah, I slapped the hell out of the trigger. Who cares? But a comment like that, you got to be real careful because you don't always get the full story behind the comment. You just get the comment, The reality is if the gun doesn't move, it doesn't matter how hard you hit the trigger. But you've got to find a way to manipulate it quicker when the conditions are appropriate. And again, it goes back to dry fire, right? I have never had a problem holding a handgun still and pulling the trigger as fast as I can. It's never been an issue for me. But I've also dry fired a bunch. It would make me wonder if our trigger slapper question writer guy dry fires at maximum speed very much.
Well, that is something he can answer or get with you. So it's now 8:52 here in East Coast and Ohio time. Maybe a couple more questions, guys, because I don't want to take up too much of Steve's time, because I know he's got a lot of things, a lot of trips to plan. And
I gotta finish packing for Mississippi, and I got to get an hour of couch time with Mrs. Anderson before I leave.
So get those questions in. I know there was a Facebook comment that I wanted to read. And guys, while you're at it, hit that like button, please, or the thumbs up button. Again, telling the folks behind the Google brain at YouTube that is, monitoring anything that's firearms related, that has fart noises and burps, apparently, that that you like this content, and they'll well, this is a private group anyways, but it makes me feel good to see that like button hit. So go ahead and hit that like button. Let me get to that Facebook question. There was one there. Wait, was Nick in our group here? Did I mention Nick Sims? I don't think so. So he's
I see that name a bunch on Facebook and in various stuff.
Oh, I think you answered his question. Yeah, you did. Steve answered him. He was the B class shooter that wanted to know. Thanks for the thumbs ups, guys. Thank you. What's better to do? The half hour in the morning. Okay, so yeah. So another person asking about the 2 times a day. So,
guys,
yeah, more times you can touch the gun, the better.
2 a days are, if you're an A class and you're wanting to get into M or just improve, if you can get 2 times a day on that gun, you're just not even going to believe how much it's going to turbocharge your development. It's going to be unbelievable.
No, that Bill, by the way, Bill Dolan, if you're, I see you're hitting the thumbs up in the Facebook, but if you could hit it up in the YouTuber, that would benefit me a lot.
Yes, Bill. Eric is very demanding about his how his appreciation is. He's got a lot of rules and regulations that need to be abided by. No burping, apparently. I apologize for the burp.
We're trying to keep the level of professionalism, I know,
yeah,
but
I know. Yeah. And by the way, there was one time on my podcast that the fart noise was real. I was doing the fart gun thing, and I thought, well, here comes something. Let's just go with it. And only one person realized it was a real fart noise.
That's great to know. We've learned some great stuff here tonight, Steve.
And that brings up another thing. There's no reason why the shooting content can't be a little more lighthearted. Sometimes these podcasts kill me because some guys are just off the rails offensive, and then other guys are just so off the rails serious. And that's one thing we try to do on that shooting show is maintain a level of levity that doesn't get out of control, but is still kind of fun.
I agree. So, all right, guys, again, last call. I'm going back through all these, make sure we answered. Hey, Anthony News is here. What's up, Anthony? I'll see you this weekend. Who else did I not? Someone said the fart gun should be in production division. Yeah. Do that just once.
It's so soft and flat. I mean, look at
Save that for your podcast, Steve.
It's got the forward grip on it, so you can get a good.
I think we got most of the questions. So, guys, if you don't submit any more questions, we're gonna look into wrapping this up, get into that segue, and finishing strong. Yeah. Okay. So people are now devolving into saying playing more AC/DC. I guess. Yeah.
I tried to play AC/DC once, and it was just too slow.
Play some Rush. Come on.
Oh, dude. Wow. Between Steve Miles wanting more math and you wanting more Rush,
can't be.
We're going to lose all the cool kids. Rush
Epic.
is stupid.
REO Speedway. How about some REO? Okay.
I suppose.
They're touring again. I got to go see it. You should come down here. We'll go see it.
You know what's great about REO Speedwagon? When you go back far enough, the concert shirts were like baseball jerseys.
Yes.
That's REO Speedwagon. I had one from Striper. I had a Striper baseball jersey concert shirt. Because you can always get your mom to buy you a Striper concert shirt. She's not going to make you pay for it.
Let's see, comment. Really enjoy that shooting show. New to Firearms Nation and the Shooter Summit. Thanks for the time you put into it, guys. Oh, thank you very much, Chris S. I can't see what it says. We're wrapping up here. Tell Steve I know how much. Okay, this is from Steve Miles. Steve, I know as much about using hit factor in my shooting as I know about the best albums of Van Halen.
Well, you don't need to worry about it that much, bud. You need to shoot. Again, Steve Miles has an excellent match mode and he's already fast. I worry a little bit that he's overthinking this. Particularly in PCC. Guys, I don't know anything about PCC. I know the hit factors tend to be higher than open. So obviously we reach a point where speed may become, I don't want to say more important, but that'd be a good question for Josh, right? Maybe you can send that question to Josh, Ark. I'm sure you have his contact information.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to bring Josh on here one of these days. And
so
you can ask him that, Steve. Again, and that guy, super nice guy for such a scary guy. Super nice guy.
Yeah, and just that game may be changing the math a little bit. It may be that it's getting so fast that the minor scoring aspect is not as painful as it is when the speed's a little bit slower. I honestly, I can't answer that question. I just know that you should never try to not shoot an A. Unless we're talking about partial targets, then it's okay. But
I saw that I posted that link with Eric Raffel is now shooting PCC. That's going to be epic. That's going to be quite the fight.
Yeah, the guy has a serious level of participation. When a national champion complains that his level of participation is inferior to Eric Raffel's, you're talking about an insane level of participation.
It's inspiring to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Last comment from Zach. He's been listening to that shooting show with his dad for about a year now, and Steve, you have helped them both so much, and he just wanted to thank you for everything that you do to the community. I mean, that's for a 14-year-old, that is pretty impressive, Zach, that you have that kind of wherewithal to say that. So, and that's great that you're doing it with your dad. That is a cool thing.
Yeah, our pod family has the greatest people. We just got a box of cookies from Hawaii from a shooting show fan, and my wife kind of understands what we do here, but I don't think she realizes how connected we get over the years when they listen to me every single day. And she's like, "What is this box from Hawaii?" Oh, that's one of the pod people send us Christmas cookies, and it's just they just take such good care of us. I really appreciate that.
This is from Jay Waring. How many rounds did you have through the old McLaren Caspian before you retired it?
Whew. I put 3 barrels in that gun and probably 75,000 through each one. That's when I was shooting the most of my entire career, whereas I was easily shooting 1,000 rounds a week. So roughly 50,000 rounds a year. Matt Sheely won't even work on that anymore. He's put 3 barrels on it. And he's like, "Don't bring this gun back to me for anything ever again." Okay. So we have to be done with that one.
Nick Sims says, Graffel and PCC is like Gordon Ramsay going to McDonald's.
I don't know what that means. Is that a sports joke?
Okay, Gordon Ramsay is like this,
he's
the chef.
chef.
Yeah. The guy that screams at his people and all that. Yeah, that's insane. This is gonna be the last question because we're at 9:00. All right, so this is from our friend down under in New Zealand, which is a beautiful country. Just watch Lord of the Rings. Okay. Thoughts on pushing the gun down post-ignition, please. In dry fire, the gun never moves, but about half a dozen rounds in live fire, I've found myself pushing the gun down. I think he's pushing against the recoil.
I have never thought of it that way. Meaning if our muscles are ordinated?
I don't know. I was just blinded by your big paws in the front of the camera like that. Maybe angle
If
it next time.
if our muscles are positioned to, there we go. How's that? Okay.
Wait, let me get you full screen because people can't see you. Go ahead. Now you're full screen.
All right. If we're using all of our muscular resources to hold this gun here, then as it comes up, all those muscular resources are going to want to put it back where it was. Now, I'm not a grip scientist the way Bob and some others, but it just seems to me that the more grip we have on it in this position, the more it's going to want to return to that position. And I have never been aware of a need or desire to push the gun back down. Right. Obviously, the better our grip is, the more that's going to happen on its own. But I've never been, because you've only got 600ths of a second. That would probably be a better question for like a Bob Vogel or maybe a Seeklander, somebody who's a little bit more scientific than I am.
Well, because JJ actually answered that question once. He said, I think there's a YouTube video of him talking about it, that if the push comes, and I think what Kiwi, he follows up, says it's noticeable when he runs the gun dry. And I've seen that before, especially if you're shooting fast, you're tensing up all those muscles around your hand because you're shooting fast, like like a bill drill or something like that, or even just runs dry. You're going to get that at the end where the gun goes down. If your rounds on the target aren't going down, I wouldn't worry about it because that's a post-ignition push. It's the pre-ignition push that people are anticipating the flinch, and so they're pushing the gun down. So tell us what your target looks like, and then I would say you'd have a problem.
That would be one of those things that I think I solved with just sheer round count. Even though I'm known as the dry fire guy, when I was coming up trying to make GM and open, I was at the range twice a week for 400 rounds. So that was 800 rounds a week of live fire practice that I was putting in. And I think a lot of those problems tend to solve themselves.
Yep.
And I've never been aware of pushing it down, but I know exactly what you mean. When you're shooting very quickly, your grip is naturally going to get more aggressive. So if you run the gun dry, you could notice, yes, I'm pushing the gun down. As long as the rounds aren't going down into the crotch of the target or down below, I think you're probably okay.
And lastly, Nearly Normal says that he went to an REO Speedwagon concert at a local bar in the 80s and it cost him $1. Well, now they're costing like $100 to go see him. But I definitely want to hit the REO Speedwagon because reminding me of my youth. And we're going to wrap it up. We're getting a lot of thanks from people. It was a good episode. So guys, again, though, this was for you just as a thank you and to provide extra value to, supporting the Shooter Summit, to getting the All Access Pass. A lot of you also helped Steve out, which is great. Steve was just knocking it out of the park this year, getting people motivated to participate in the summit. And so, Steve, any last remarks you want to tell these people before you go? You have a big schedule coming up, but guys, remember, contact Steve. What are the best ways for them to contact you, Steve?
The very best way to do it is to use their Windows XP machine and send me
burn it
and send me an email to steve@andersonshooting.com. That is the best way. Facebook message is okay, but those can tend to, sometimes I lose those for a couple of days and have to find them again. Email is by far the best. And if you want to do a class, just send me an email, say, hey, I live in Poughkeepsie, I want to do a class, and I will help you as much as I possibly can make that happen. And Arik, I want to thank you because I don't think people realize how much time and energy you put into this Shooter Summit thing. I would assume 18 times the amount of time that I've spent with you on it, plus another 3 hours of post per shooter, I would guess, 3 to 4 hours of post-production.
Yeah.
There's
a lot.
Yeah. So
one day I'll have a staff.
I'm telling you that's an impressive accomplishment. And,
well, thank you.
From the shooting community needs to realize how lucky they are to have a resource like that. So it's great.
Really appreciate it. And I just got to ask, are you like a big French Connection fan?
Because you keep saying me that.
What?
I'm asking you that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. Is that a movie?
Yeah, The French Connection was a book, then it became a good movie with Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider, because Gene Hackman's character keeps asking people, "Have you curled your toes? Have you curled your toes in Poughkeepsie?"
Oh.
And you keep saying Poughkeepsie, and I'm like, "Why is he? That's like the most random city in New York to even bring up." And he
we
keeps.
we could call it Stabeaton, New Jersey. Hey, I live in Stabeaton, New
Okay,
Jersey.
there you go.
Because you know what Stabeaton is, don't you?
No.
Stabeaton is the heart of rock and roll, and I always thought if I could just get to Stabeaton, which is the heart of rock and roll, then my musical dreams could be accomplished. And I just realized, I figured it was in New Jersey. The heart of rock and roll is Stabeaton. I figured it was a town in New Jersey. So we won't say Poughkeepsie, we'll say Stabeaton.
You can say Poughkeepsie. At least you know how to pronounce it.
I live in Stabeaton, New Jersey, the heart of rock and roll, and I want to do a class. Perfect.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here tonight. We've gone from fart guns to burps to French Connection and REO Speedwagon. We've traveled the world from Buenos Aires to New Zealand, all the way to Australia and back to the United States and Canada. We are one community. We are devoted to training and getting better with our shooting skills. And you can follow Steve on That Shooting Show. Like I said, he's up the content. It's really good. And he's starting to do videos. So be watching announcements somewhere where he'll be having these videos posted. And I'll work with him on that. Steve Miles is saying French Connection's playing on PBS this week. So there you go, Steve. You can watch it. And guys, if you haven't already, you can subscribe to this channel, this YouTube channel. I will be starting it up again with a whole slew of new things for 2019. I had to take a stop at it when I was doing the summit because, the summit took a lot of energy out of me. But I do love YouTube. I do love video. And the Firearms Nation podcast is still going strong. So if you're not in the community on Facebook, we can stay in touch through email. But if you are on Facebook, join the Shooter Summit community, the group, because a lot of stuff is going to be posted there. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you for taking time out of your Tuesday night. Sorry if I got it wrong. I said it was Wednesday before. Tuesday night with Steve Anderson, live Q&A. And join me on the next couple of weeks. I'll have another Summit speaker come on where you can get your questions answered. So with that, Steve, I'm going to say good night to the audience. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the Shooting Summit. And thank you, Steve, for taking the time to answer these questions.
You got it, sir. Anytime.
And we are ending.
Perfect.
All right. So now